sneaky rabbit. One night, when the moon was very bright, Rabbit was resting near a pond. He was very tired and wanted to go to sleep, but he was scared the tiger was going to eat him up. Rabbit tried and tried to stay awake. He looked up at the sky and started to count the stars. Soon Rabbit was fast asleep. Suddenly, a loud booming voice woke him up. It was Tiger.
Aha! Now I've got you, little rabbit. You'll be perfect in my soup.
Rabbit was very frightened, but he had an idea. He looked in the water and saw the reflection of the moon. It looked like a big lump of cheese. He moved his mouth, pretending to eat, and said, "Nom, nom, nom, nom. Ah, Tiger, I'm happy to see you. Nom, nom, nom. Come and share this delicious white cheese with me. Nom, nom, nom. I'm keeping it fresh for you in the pond." Tiger loved white cheese. He licked his lips. Yum.
I can see the cheese, but how do you get it out of the pond? He asked.
Easy, said Rabbit. I tie this stone around my foot and jump in. Do you want to try? Tiger tied the stone around his foot and jumped into the pond. Splash! Rabbit ran away saying, "Ha ha! Now you're the one in the soup." And I've heard the tiger is still trying to get out of the pond. The lump of gold. Paul was a very rich man, but he never spent any of his money. He was scared that someone would steal it. He pretended to be poor and wore dirty old clothes. People laughed at him, but he didn't care. He only cared about his money. One day, he bought a big lump of gold. He hid it in a hole by a tree. Every night, he went to the hole to look at his treasure. He sat and he looked. "No one will ever find my gold," he said. But one night, a thief saw Paul looking at his gold. And when Paul went home, the thief picked up the lump of gold, slipped it into his bag, and ran away. The next day, Paul went to look at his gold, but it wasn't there. It had disappeared. Paul cried and cried. He cried so loud that a wise old man heard him and came to help. Paul told him the sad tale of the stolen lump of gold. "Don't worry," he said. "Get a big stone and put it in the hole by the tree." "What?" said Paul. "Why? What did you do with your lump of gold?" "I sat and looked at it every day," said Paul. "Exactly," said the wise old man. "You can do exactly the same with a stone." Paul listened, thought for a moment, and then said, "Yes, you're right. I've been very silly. I don't need a lump of gold to be happy." The magic fish. Every day, Robert's grandfather went fishing. One day, Robert asked to go too. Well, I want to catch the magic fish. The first person to eat it will become the cleverest person in the world. Can you help me?" "Yes," said Robert, and they went fishing. First, they caught a yellow fish with purple spots. "Wow! Is that the magic fish?" asked Robert. "No," said his grandfather. Then they caught a blue fish with the red stripes. "Is that the magic fish?" asked Robert. "No," said his grandfather. Suddenly, they caught a big, beautiful silverfish with pink and green diamonds. Robert's grandfather jumped for joy. It was the magic fish. They started to cook the fish, and his grandfather went to get some more wood. He asked Robert to watch the fish, but not to eat any of it. Robert watched the fish very carefully. He saw a tiny bubble on its tail and touched it with his finger. Pop! The bubble burst. The fish was very hot and burnt his finger. Ouch! He put his finger in his mouth. When his grandfather came back, he saw that something was different. "Did you touch the fish?" asked his grandfather. "Yes, I'm sorry," said Robert. His grandfather sighed a happy sigh and gave Robert a big hug. "The magic fish chose you. You are the cleverest boy in the world, and I am the proudest grandfather ever." The magic paintbrush. Rose loved drawing. She was very poor and didn't have pens or pencils. She drew pictures in the sand with sticks. One day, an old woman saw Rose and said, "Hello, here's a paintbrush and some paper for you." "Thank you," smiled Rose. She was so happy. What can I paint?" she thought. She looked around and saw a duck on the pond. "I know, I'll paint a duck." So she did. Suddenly, the duck flew off the paper and onto the pond. "Wow," she said, "a magic paintbrush." Rose was a very kind girl, and she painted pictures for everyone in her village. She painted a cow for the farmer, pencils for the teacher, and toys for all the children. The king heard about the magic paintbrush and sent a soldier to find Rose. "Come with me," said the soldier. "The king wants you to paint some money for him." "But he's already rich," said Rose. "I only paint to help poor people." But the nasty soldier took Rose to the king. "Paint me a tree with lots of money on it," he shouted. Rose was brave and said no. So the king sent her to prison. But Rose painted a key for the door and a horse to help her escape. The king chased after her, so she painted a big hole and splat, the king fell in. Today, Rose only uses her magic paintbrush to help people who really, really need help.